Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got a news and rumor video to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from the past couple of days, some very interesting news updates, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Canucks, the Predators, the Sabres, and the Anaheim Ducks. We'll go to all the updates from the past couple of days coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this for all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, as per usual, we've got another news and rumor video to discuss. So we're going to start off by discussing a couple of signings. There are two signings that happened last weekend, both involving the Ottawa Senators that I want to talk about here today. So first, with the Ottawa Senators, they have signed Jenik. Jenik was acquired last year in the offseason from the Utah Mammoth. Played one season with Ottawa, was basically a call-up option, and the Senators have given the RFA a new contract. He's a winger. He can also play on the center side. He winds up getting a one-year contract extension AAV of league minimum, so $775,000. Not a bad deal there for Ottawa. Like, Jenik is probably going to start the season at the AHL level again this year, but once again can be a call-up option. Last year had 12 goals and 29 points in 52 AHL games. Also had no points in 2 NHL games. So once again, not a bad player, and a guy who can definitely be a call-up option and if there's some injuries, play on the fourth line, but not an overly huge addition there for the Ottawa Senators, so very interesting note there. But the Senators have signed Jenik to a new one-year deal, and then they've also signed UFA defenseman Cameron Crotty, who played the last couple of seasons in Arizona and Utah. He's a right-shot defenseman, 26 years old, basically an AHL level player who might be able to be a call-up option. Gets a 2-year contract with the AAV of $813,000. Last year, playing in Minnesota, had 1 game of NHL action, putting up no points. Also had 10 assists in 64 AHL games. So it wasn't an overly bad player. Once again, mostly an AHL level guy who can, on occasions, be a call-up option. So very interesting to note there were 2 former Coyote players in Crotty and Jenik, who are more AHL level guys at this point in time, have signed new deals in Ottawa and should be call-up options for the Senators for this upcoming season. So very interesting to note there. But those were the 2 signings from our past couple of days. So those are very interesting signing updates there for the Ottawa Senators. Next, going over to a couple of news updates. So going over to a couple of news updates, we've got a couple of things to talk about here. First, with the Los Angeles Kings. On a recent interview he did, Andre Kopitar apparently hinted at the fact that this could wind up being Kopitar's last season at the NHL level. So that's very interesting note there, as Kopitar could be entering the final year of his career. So very interesting note there, like Kopitar's had a long, great career with Los Angeles. He's the team leader in games played, the team leader in assists. Could wind up finishing his career as the team leader in points. Probably not going to get the all-time goal-scoring leader for the LA Kings, but still, Kopitar's had a very long, illustrious career with the Los Angeles Kings, one of the best two-way players in the entire NHL. He helped the Kings go win 2 cups all those years ago, back in 2012 and 2014, so it seems like Kopitar is considering at least the possibility that this could wind up being his last season, and that could lead to motivation for the Los Angeles Kings to finally break out and get past round 1 this year. So very interesting note there, but very interesting note that it could be Andre Kopitar's last season in the NHL, so very interesting note there. Next, going over to Kaprizov, there were a couple of recent articles I saw saying that the Minnesota Wild could pay Kaprizov upwards of $16 million, making him the new highest paid player. Now, we don't know what McDavid is going to get at the end of the day, but it seems like, according to a couple of recent reports I saw from Minnesota media, I think even Michael Russo was mentioning this, that Kaprizov could get whatever sort of AAV and bonus structure he wants, so long as it's an upwards of 5-year contract. So it seems like this could be a very long-term and high-money deal for Kaprizov. He is one of the best wingers in the entire NHL, do not get me wrong, but he worth $16 million. Like, I'm not exactly sure if it's be worth it to make him the highest paid player. Like, I think he should be like a $13 maybe million AAV player, but it seems that the Wild are willing to go above and beyond to sign Kaprizov. It just seems like they want to sign him on a longer-term extension, so very interesting note there. So we'll see if Kaprizov extension gets done potentially before the start of the regular season. Next, going over to Kiefer Sherwood. Apparently, he has changed agents, so that's a very interesting note there. Sherwood is into a value his deal with the Vancouver Canucks, coming off one of his best point total seasons, had a career year into the hit category, so Sherwood's been a really solid bottom 6 forward, could be one of the under-the-radar good UFA candidates for his upcoming season. The Canucks have recently been mentioned as wanting to sign him, which could be very interesting to note there. Apparently, there's some talk that if Sherwood was a hit for agency, he could get a really hefty pay raise, so very interesting note there, but Sherwood has changed changed agents, and we shall see if he winds up signing an extension in Vancouver or maybe winds up going to free agency next year, so we shall wait and see on that. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. When it comes to some injury updates, we've got 3 players here to talk about. Nick Jensen in Ottawa, Zach Hyman in Edmonton, and Josh Morrissey in Winnipeg. Now when it comes to Morrissey, he's apparently completely healthy from his knee injury he sustained back over in the postseason against the St. Louis Blues. He suffered an injury, missed a lot of time against the Dallas Stars, and also Game 7 against the St. Louis Blues. So that was a bad blow there for the Winnipeg Jets, but Morrissey's apparently now 100% healthy and will be good to go for training camp, so that's really good stuff there for the Jets. Nick Jensen, well, there's no concrete timeline as to when he's going to return, is apparently ahead of his original schedule, so that's really good stuff there for the Senators to see Nick Jensen progressing well, and I'm not sure if he'll be able to start the season for the Senators, but it seems like he probably won't miss too much time if he does miss the start of the season, so very interesting out there. And lastly, going over to Zach Hyman, apparently he had wrist surgery. We talked about this a long time ago, just after the Western Conference Final. Zach Hyman got wrist surgery, which kept him out for the entirety of the Stanley Cup Final, and apparently, according to Zach Hyman, he says that he's not exactly 100% sure if he's going to be able to start the season for the Edmonton Oilers. So it sounds like Hyman, well, he is progressing quite well from his wrist injury and still practicing, might miss the first few weeks of the season for the Edmonton Oilers, which would be a big blow for the Edmonton Oilers in their top 6. So very interesting note there, but it seems like Hyman may miss the start of the season for Edmonton. Nick Jensen is progressing well from his injury, and Josh Morrissey is completely ready to go for training camp. So very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of players potentially going overseas. According to a couple of recent reports, Calvin DeHaan has been linked to the SHL, and Samsonov is drawing interest from the KHL. Now, according to some recent reports, DeHaan going over to the SHL is not concrete and finalized yet. It's just something that the SHL teams are looking at to try and bring in Calvin DeHaan. Well, there has been one team that had an interest in Ilya Samsonov, but Samsonov is still trying to sign an NHL contract, which might be like a PTO at this point in time. So we shall wait and see on that, but apparently, according to some recent reports, Samsonov and DeHaan are getting some interest from overseas, and we shall see if the veteran defenseman and younger goaltender are going to go overseas or if they're going to stay and look for NHL opportunities. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But those are all the updates from the past couple of days, as Kopitar could be playing his last year in the NHL. Kaprizov could get upwards of $16 million on a new AAV. Kiefer changed agents. We saw a couple of injury updates and a couple of players potentially going overseas. So very interesting note there. And lastly, we're going over to a couple of trade rumors. So going over to a couple of trade rumors, we've got a couple of things to talk about here. First, Josh Wegman of The Score was talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins and Vancouver Canucks, and he mentioned a potential trade proposal that could work out for both the Pittsburgh Penguins and Vancouver Canucks. Now, he says that they have been trading a whole bunch, especially ever since Jim Rutherford, Patrick Allvin have joined the Vancouver Canucks staff. They like to trade with their old team in Pittsburgh because they're familiar with a lot of the players that are there. And apparently a name that the Canucks could have some major interest in to try and bolster their forward group would be Rickard Rakell. Now, Rakell is a guy who has been mentioned quite a bit ever since the trade deadline in trade speculations. He's got, I think, 2 or 3 more seasons left, just over $5 million cap hit. Will be a really solid add for a whole bunch of teams. A guy who I think could wind up being dealt at some point during training camp if the Pittsburgh Penguins could find the right trade. Now, the ask is probably going to be pretty high, but according to this proposed trade from Wegman, it would make some sense for both sides to do so. So the trade that he mentioned was that the Pittsburgh Penguins would send the Vancouver Canucks Rickard Rakell, and in exchange the Penguins would get Kaprizov, who's the top prospect in the Canucks organization, as well as Nils Höglander, and a top 10 protected 2026 first round pick. Now, it would be a lot to give up. Like, it would be a top 10 protected first round pick, so they could still keep it if it's in the top 10, but if it's not in the top 10, that could be a really solid pickup here in a deep draft for the Penguins. They also get a solid top 9 forward in Höglander, signed for a couple more seasons, and they get a young defensive prospect in Kaprizov, who I think long term could be a solid third, second pair defenseman on the Penguins blue line. Well, for the Canucks, it would help them win now. There are teams trying to win at this current point in time. They are trying to get better to try and show Quinn Hughes that he can win there and that he should resign. So adding Rickard Rakell would instantly improve their top 6. Adding him to a guy like DeBrusk and Pettersson and Hedel and all those guys they have in the top 6, that would be a massive staple. And Rakell could put up like 30 goals in the Canucks organization. So I think that trade could work. I think it probably would be a little more hesitant on the Canucks side because they'd be giving up so much. But I think adding Rakell could be a really solid pickup there for the Canucks, and I think with the haul they would get in that proposed trade tree, that would really work out for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So like I said, I'm not sure if the Canucks would do that, but it's a very interesting deal that I think would be very close to being a deal that both sides would accept. So very interesting note there, but Wegman proposes that the Canucks could try and go after Rickard Rakell. Next, going over to Luke Fox, he was looking at some of the RFAs remaining, guys like Mason McTavish, Marco Rossi before he recently got signed, and he was looking at some of the RFAs who could wind up still being dealt by their current clubs, and he says that the most likely RFA to get dealt right now, who's still unsigned, is Nashville Predators forward Luke Evangelista. Now, Evangelista has been a really solid top six guy over the past couple of years in the Predators organization, fitting really well in the Preds top six, but he's still a guy who's unsigned. The Predators have loads of cap space to sign him, and he's not probably going to be asking for too much. Like, I think Evangelista at max could get like $4.5 million on new AAV. So like, I don't know why there's no extension in place yet, and the Predators are more of an older team, so signing a younger guy like Evangelista should be a top priority for them, but at this current point in time, it hasn't been signed yet. So it's very interesting to note there. So Luke Fox does think that out of the remaining RFAs, Evangelista might be one of the guys who is most likely to get dealt, and if Evangelista was on the trade block, a lot of teams could have some interest in a solid top six up-and-coming young forward who has a ceiling of putting up like 40, 50, maybe 60 points in an NHL season. So once again, I don't think it's a guarantee by any means Evangelista gets moved, because he is a really solid young player in the Predators organization, and they do still have a ton of cap space. But it is interesting to note there that we're very close to entering training camp, and Evangelista is not signed yet. So we're very interested to note there. We're keeping on Luke Evangelista. He might wind up being dealt by the Nashville Predators. Next, going over to the Buffalo Sabres, I saw a couple of recent articles about this, mentioning that the Buffalo Sabres could try and go after, in a trade, Tyler Bertuzzi from Chicago. Now, I know the Buffalo Sabres are going to really try and push hard this upcoming season to make it back to the playoffs. They missed for, what, 13, 14 straight years. They do not want to miss again, and Buffalo's fans deserve to finally see some playoff action. So I think adding a top six forward, maybe before season starts, maybe closer to the deadline, will be a smart move there for Buffalo. Bertuzzi could be a guy who could really fit well with the Buffalo Sabres. Like, he could fit in the top six with guys like Tuck and Thompson and Quinn and all those other guys that they have in the top six. He could be a solid power forward type guy like he has been in Boston and Detroit and Chicago and Toronto. I think it'd be a really solid fit there for the Buffalo Sabres. Now, it would probably take a pretty good ask. Like, I'm thinking like a second round pick and really good prospect. That would have to be moved to Chicago to make that sort of a deal work. But I think it's a deal that could work out for Buffalo. Like, if they were to have Bertuzzi, like, he can put you up around 20 goals. He can put you up between 40 and 50 points, and he can be a solid, tough to play against, hard to play against forward who I think would really work well, especially if the Buffalo Sabres were to make the playoffs. So once again, no guarantees or anything that these two teams are even talking, but I have seen recent reports speculating that the Buffalo Sabres could be a landing spot for Tyler Bertuzzi and could try and go after him. And like I said, I think that could be a really good fit there for the Buffalo Sabres in their top six. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Eric Stevens of The Athletic. He was recently talking about the Anaheim Ducks and says that they could look to try and add some more forward help, which is something that Ducks have not yet done this offseason by moving some of their younger defensemen. So that could be a very interesting concept there for the Ducks. Like, there has been some small rumblings over the past maybe a year that they could look to move Zellweger as well as Mintyukov if the right deal came along. Now, they have a whole bunch of really solid defensive prospects in the Ducks system, just like the Montreal Canadiens. Not all of them are going to be able to play at the NHL level. Trouba and Gudas are entering the final year of their deals, but if this team is going to be competing for a playoff spot this year, the Ducks might not want to move those guys, so they might be more interested in moving some of their younger pieces and maybe try and get a forward upgrade. If they were to move Mintyukov or Zellweger for some sort of a top six addition, that might make a whole bunch of sense there for the Ducks. They've been linked to Jason Robertson. They've been linked to two Pittsburgh forwards and Rustin Raquel. They've been linked to a couple of other guys. So like, I'm not exactly sure if they will try and add someone before the season starts. They may try and go into the season with all of the players that are on the roster, but if maybe closer to trade deadline, they still want to add top six forward to try and improve this team, make it a little more lethal. I think moving a guy like Zellweger or Mintyukov might make some sense with the depth of the prospects they have in the blue line. That maybe they move one of those guys, maybe a guy like Lunio or Lacombe winds up playing top 4 minutes, and then they can have a top six forward who can really help round out that top six. So once again, we'll have to wait and see on that, but I think it does make some sense, and I think it'd have to be the right defensive prospect and the right trade package. But if those things were right, I do think there could be some sort of a move for the Anaheim Ducks. So once again, we're have to wait and see on that. No guarantees at this point in time that any of the Ducks' young prospect defensemen are moved. But if it was to get them a top 6 forward, I could definitely see that happening. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's all I'm going to talk for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think the Ducks could move a younger defender if it got them a top 6 forward? Does Bertuzzi to Buffalo make some sense? Do you think Evangelista is a solid trade candidate for Nashville? And do you think that proposed trade between Pittsburgh and Vancouver makes sense? Definitely going to touch on all of that, plus all of the news updates and the signings from the past couple of days. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're listening, subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. Also, the blog, comment news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I've linked that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.